In the last couple of years, I have made B2B SaaS startups around $60 million in new sales by teaching them how to book thousands of calls in over 100 different niches. And in this video, I will walk you through the lead gen roadmap that I created. And by the end of this video, you will learn how to solve your B2B SaaS startups lead generation problem forever. So I'll be going through this roadmap today, and if you would want to download it, you will be able to find it inside my Telegram channel, which I'll put the link to nearby, and it's called Shatalin DD. And at the same time, you may apply for my coaching at saascamp.com if you don't want to spend years figuring it out like I have done for you. Now let's dive in. So I divided the lead gen roadmap into three key stages. It's going to be the discovery stage, which has about 0 to 5 demos a week. Then there is validation stage, 5 to 20 demos a week. And then there is scaling stage, 20 to 100 demos a week. Sometimes you may find yourself in the validation stage, but experience the fact that your growth is not sustainable and you're not sure how to be predictably getting from here to here. So again, no matter where you are right now, I'll explain you what are the fundamentals you need to have in place for you to be able to sustainably scale further. So discovery stage, and before we go into specifics, first I'd like to talk about the lead generation philosophy and psychology that is going into this. So what gets you booked calls? It is inviting the right person to solve a problem using the right words at the right timing at enough volume. And getting more meetings is about scaling these invitations to this audience. This means if you aren't booking meetings right now, you may be missing out on either of these factors because all of them need to come together for you to start getting consistent 5-20 call weeks. You may have the situation that this audience doesn't have this problem, so it's the wrong audience. Then this problem doesn't exist or not painful enough. And this often happens when you have not previously paid for solutions similar to yours. Again, unless you know that people are willing to pay for it, I'd be very cautious going for this blue ocean type ideas because you may lose years trying to do this. And if your goal is to start making millions of dollars a year, I promise you, you don't need to reinvent the wheel and create some revolutionary new idea. You don't need to. This problem doesn't exist, then timing is wrong, and I'll explain this further as well. If you offer your solution to people at the wrong timing, it is not going to be working. So for example, imagine you have a fantastic HR solution that helps people screen candidates. If you scrape the lead list and you're reaching out to prospects who have just placed the candidate, maybe because you've done the list wrong or your messaging is not shaped the right way, nothing is going to be working and you may be finding yourself having these lead gen issues. Then you may communicate your problem and or solution wrong because it is not only about describing, well, usually if you can describe people's problem right, it's gonna get them on a call with you just because they will feel that you understand them. However, usually for the call booking to occur, you need to get both the problem and solution wording right. Then not enough people receive your invite for you to even judge if it's working or not. And I have had many founders who would come to me asking for help and saying, "Oh, Denis, we tried cold email, but it's not working for us. How many emails you sent?" I asked them. They're like 1,000 emails. And I'm assuming you did it from one or two domains, and open rate was below 30%, etc. And it turns out that they have never done a proper test for them to even judge on this. With cold email, we're talking 10, 20,000 emails sent before you can even judge on anything. So the sample size may just be wrong. It's like, imagine that someone, for example, tries to learn how to play basketball, makes 3 or 4 shots, misses them, and then says, "Oh, I will never be able to land basketball shots." No, it's just the technique was wrong and they just made only 3 or 4 shots. For you to shoot better than anyone else in the startup game, you need to be making tens of thousands daily. So you can have the best product in the world, but if you're not offering it to the right people at the right time and enough times at enough volume, you will lose to your competitors. So knowing that, there is a GTM framework which I like using, which is called the PACE framework. It stands for Problem, Audience, Channel, and Expansion. And with every startup I start working with, what we do is we break down, okay, what is the pain that you are solving? Because all successful businesses start with the pain existing. And we define, okay, it is inefficiency in developer hiring process. Okay, then we look into what is the audience that's going to be willing to pay us most for solving this pain problem, like pain point or problem. And okay, if this is just this random idea of software that optimizes developer hiring, the companies that would be the ones we should be reaching out to, who experience this problem the most, are the ones that hire a lot of developers and who are spending a lot on developers. So first thing, I'm thinking about IT startups that have just raised their B or C round of funding, and now they're going to be scaling their development team from, say, 5, 10 to 15, 50 people, right? Because then you can get the on board at this pre-hockey stick growth moment and make a nice deal out of that. Then the channel. Keep in mind, we don't start with channel, because unless we define the problem and audience, you may do it wrong. That's why first, okay, if these are, as we just realized, the IT startups that raised their B or C round of funding, what are the channels and the exact personas that we should be reaching out through? So in our case, for the channels, okay, where can we get in front of such startups? First ideas would be Meta ads, LinkedIn, cold email. Pretty much that. Then you may scale further through content. And then the expansion strategy, as I started talking about it, is, okay, once you start booking consistent number of demos, what are different ways you can scale this further? Now, how to know which channel you need to do? So it's a very long topic, but some key highlights here. The case study Meta ad system works for all solutions. I mean, I made it work across over 100 different niches so far, and that's because Meta has access to 3 billion people. Then you may see or find out what's already working for your competitors, and this is a terribly underrated tactic. So one of the first things we often do with startups is we identify, okay, sure, we don't know what's the best channel for you. Let us go and take a look what your competitors are doing. And sometimes we use different creative ways to find out, okay, if they are, for instance, sending cold emails, high chance you would be the one receiving them if you get scraped in the same list, and so on. If you can see that, okay, your competitors are getting results with, for instance, Google ads and Meta ads, and they have blank, and you know that they are, for example, $10-50 million businesses, it often may indeed just be the case that they are just doing that and potentially like some events. So again, competitor research is very underrated. I don't see that many people doing it, but you may save yourself a couple of years if you just find out, okay, for nearly identical solutions as yours, keep in mind, not for other startups, right? But for people who are serving the same audience as you, ideally same price tag slash solution type, what has already worked for them historically. You find it out, congratulations, you just saved yourself a lot of money. Then can you easily find your audience with LinkedIn Sales Navigator? If all of them are trying to be as visible there as possible, like for example ERP managers or accountants or like either other corporate types of folks, then LinkedIn may indeed be the way to go. And another important comment here is, for the start, just I'll tell you, every channel works is just every channel is going to have limited efficiency depending on the type of solution you're growing. So for example, yes, I can somehow manage to get in front of truck drivers through LinkedIn, but it would be one of the most inefficient ways to get in front of them. However, just calling them and showing them Facebook ads is going to get me meetings with them a lot quicker. Then put same amount of money and energy into each of these things and see, so that you can compare, okay, where you can get better traction. And then another one is you can just ask me so I can advise you. So a couple examples, like traditional businesses, oftentimes you do combination of cold calling and meta ads, and I mean some like screen printing shops, then factories, stuff like that. Then corporate vibe ones is LinkedIn outbound or content combined with meta ads. That's working well for us. Sometimes you put cold email / cold calling on top of that. Nice. Then next thing is the $36,000 lesson I want to share with you. So once I paid one coach $36,000, and on our second week, he drew my attention that all people who have gotten to 200K to 500K a month with the same business model that I'm doing did nothing else but YouTube and meta ads. And this gave me peace of mind that I've been seeking for years. And sadly, I learned it only after putting nearly $500,000 and 3 years of effort into all other different things. And I never zoomed out to see this prior to working with him. So again, when you can zoom out and understand, okay, guys, what are we doing? We've been posting these stupid TikToks for half a year. We already put so much money and effort into this. It's not getting us real money. Let's see what competitors are doing and what just logically makes the most sense for our solution. If you're still finding it difficult to figure it out, then I'm just telling you, look, again, Meta has 3 billion people, and it works not only for the starting stage, but also at scale. That's why I love it so much. Golden rule from 9-figure entrepreneurs, that until 1 million ARR, you want to put 85% of all hours in your work week into getting more sales, and then figure out the rest on the go. We have had fantastic case studies with those startup founders that have just heard this advice from me, did this as described, and then they've made like multiple 6 figures in just a couple of months of us working together. And they were just starting at like 10-20K MRR or so. And this will get you resources to solve all your other problems later, because it is much harder for you to solve all your legal, product, customer support issues, and all other headaches when you have no cash flow coming in. At the same time, if you have a couple of sales coming in each day, usually, as long as your business model is sustainable, you're gonna have more cash to solve everything. Now for the roadmap here. So what we're gonna discuss is, okay, what are top 3 reasons other customers paid for my solution, booked a call? And like with this one, I will break down how you can find message market fit to start getting this initial 5 demos a week. So what you do is you check with existing customers if someone has already paid for your solution. If not, I already told you what to do. So you go and you figure out by watching the sales call recording or by doing an interview, okay, what are the main 3 reasons why you paid for our solution? And usually the one main reason. Then they tell you, for example, we paid for your solution that speeds up development hiring because it has the function to compare candidates' code in real time that no other solution offer does. You say, great. What you do next is you just take this message, oftentimes in their own words that they just given you the reason why they paid, and you must put it in front of as many people as possible. So for that you would use meta ads, cold email, LinkedIn outbound, cold calling, this stuff. So the reason I like Meta ads is because it can reach, again, as I mentioned, 3 billion people and has your buyers regardless of who they are. You can check my guides on all other acquisition methods on my YouTube channel as well. So see which gets you most meetings with leads who pay most and quickest. Imagine you may have 5 meetings from one channel, each about 5k tickets, like deal size, but it takes them half a year to close. And then at the same time you have 10 meetings from another, 5 meetings from another channel, also same ticket size, but it takes them half the time to close. Guess what you need to do? You are looking not only for people who pay you the highest amount, but at the combination of highest amount paid and in the quickest time frame. And this is going to be the audience that's going to be allowing you to scale your startup quickest. Then you see what gets you the best quality meetings, and then you make new campaign doubling down on that, and you repeat this process infinitely to keep booking meetings. You see, okay, what are the winning angles that get us the best type of people, and then you put 20% of all your budgeted effort into testing new angles around that. Next, are you getting meetings at your KPI? And reminder, the KPI usually at which you want to be booking demos would be 10% of your annual contract value. If you are selling a 5k annual solution, typically you would want to book meetings at $500 or cheaper. If yes, you build on the best performing angle and scale this. If not, you interview customers again, see what's working for competitors in terms of angles, which messaging they're using, and you repeat this unless you're able to book meetings at this amount. Now, couple things here. So you need to find your message market fit, and you may be offering your best important one. You may be offering your best steak to people who just walked out of the restaurant, wrong timing. You may be offering it to vegans, which would mean wrong audience. You may be sending global cold emails about your steakhouse instead of just spending $100 on Google Ads in your area. In other words, it may work, but with a billion emails sent, instead of just putting $100 into the local area to get the right traffic, or simply by offering it through the right channel. So the main idea I wanted to explain here is that you need to screen, again, if you're under 10 meetings a week, just see if you're making either of these mistakes, because you don't know how often it turns out that you are just zoomed in and working in the business for a year or two, and you don't understand that you're trying to sell your steakhouse to sell your steak to vegans. In our random IT placement, IT developer placement solution that I just came up with, the example would be if you are trying to sell it to developers inside the company and not to people who have their salary or basically company's money attached to it. So who would be reasonable to sell this to? I would say I would be very careful saying HRs, because keep it in mind that if HR is getting paid for doing a lot of work, they might be sabotaging getting your HR solution, because the better your solution is, the easier it is to replace your HR. And I once worked at a company which failed because of this, where I was forced to be doing cold calling and I was selling our recruitment services. And the interesting thing that founder didn't figure out back then is that you are going to be very hard time selling people the replacement, like their replacement. So that's why usually the higher up the ladder you go, the easier it is going to be. Now, channels which sort of help but are the worst peaks for discovery stage for getting the first 5 meetings. Content. Look, it works on the side, but may take hundreds of posts before you find what type of posts resonate, and that's if you're gonna be even lucky to start getting meetings and sales from it. If you are getting some, great, but usually it's not predictable and you depend on post algorithms, and you got me. Then SEO, it's a waste of money before you pass the discovery stage and have proven your ICP, offer, and messaging. Because for you to have good SEO strategy, you need to certainly know who are your best type of customers, why exactly they buy your product, and what messaging you need to have for them to say, yes, I want this now. And this never occurs before you have 30 or 50 sales. A lot of founders, I know that SEO is very, how shall I say, technical founder friendly, especially the say this automated SEO where you just use GPT to put together 50 or 100 different blog posts. I mean, fine, but I would say it's not a distraction. It's just I don't really like this, since sure there are some niches for which it may work, but it's not the fastest way for you to get meetings. Because it what I dislike about it, because I've made the same mistake myself, you may spend 5 to like 15 months writing content for certain persona just to start booking some meetings with them and start converting some sales 6 or 8 months down the line, after already throwing a lot of money into that, just to realize that long term this one model is not very sustainable and you need to sell to a different type of audience. And now you sort of like wasted a year writing to the wrong people. I don't want this to happen to you, so that's why I suggest you go for either of these ones, so that you know, so you can have a much quicker feedback cycle. The lesson which I cannot emphasize big like can't emphasize enough is stop selling to poor people. Again, very often ignored by a lot of founders, but it's true. Unless you want to just vibe code free products for fun and you want to have cash flow, stop selling to poor people. So for example, if you're trying to make a business out of selling to freelancers or solopreneurs, you should better get VC funding for that, or I mean, if you have a previous exit from another venture and you have a couple $1 million in the bank that you're willing to burn, fine. I usually specialize in getting people cash flow as fast as possible so that they are making couple times more from their marketing than they're spending. So you get paid for your tool because it saves people time. The more valuable time for your ICP is, the more you can charge. So think who would pay most to solve problem your solution helps with. Remember how I came up with this idea for the software placing, developer placing solution? If you try to sell it to people who are hiring their first, third, or fourth developer, you're going to be barely trying to convince them to pay you a couple $100, because they only have a couple of candidates. It's super easy for them. And this is like same analogy as selling your steaks to vegans and doing this right after they ate. So it's like zero chance. At the same time, if you start approaching people with the identical product but just at the right time, for example, they raised a round and now they announced like, look, we're hiring next 30 or 50 developers in the next quarter. Imagine how much easier it is for you to sell your solution for 10, 20K annual ticket size, because if they don't buy it, they are gonna incur millions of dollars in wasted costs. Keep this in mind. So there are many words about should you do one channel or many channels, and I'll comment on this now. The way you need to approach it is, first you want to test a bunch of different channels so that you know what you compare results with, because no solution is built same, and that's it. So for your first couple customers and your first journey to the initial 5 demos a week in the discovery stage, you want to test a bunch of different things to see maybe even though you are getting a couple meetings a week with 10 hours of effort from LinkedIn, and it seems to be working for now. How about you find out that there is another strategy which requires 5 minutes of time and gets you 5 times the meetings? You never know about it if you just blindly stick to doing one thing forever. But right after you do this initial testing, and for example, say you put, for instance, 30 hours of effort of team time into top 3 channels which make the most sense, then you can compare, okay, we gotten this types of meetings from here, these types of sales from here. It makes more sense for us to double down on this one thing. Keep in mind that you want to be looking for something which is predictable, so you can control how many inputs you're making and outputs you're receiving. And it shouldn't be content, because with content you can't do it. Later on, for scaling, yes, it helps to get even more lead flow. Then you do a bunch of channels at the start, then you use one channel to hit your first 1 to 3 million ARR, and then after you are at this range, you can have enough money to then diversify and go broad again, to start being present in different channels. So you test top 3, 5, which makes the most sense, double down on the best one which is performing better, and then you scale. So what I like about the case study system I'm now using with a lot of startups is because it gets you not from 1 to 10 meetings, but also scales from 10 to 60 and onwards. Getting to 5 demos a week by channel. So here are some random examples of how you can get to your initial consistent 5 meetings a week in different channels. Cold calling, you scrape Google Maps and you start doing 100 dials a day, you or someone you place. This usually gets you there. Then meta ads, you want to test 3 ad sets, 3 creatives in each, and this gives you an opportunity to see how different angles perform and which messaging resonates more. LinkedIn outbound, you do 140 connections a week per account, you have usually 50% acceptance rate, and you turn 5 to 10% of accepted connections into booked calls. This also would put you roughly there. Then cold email, you do 40 domains, 2 inboxes per domain. This gets you 1600 emails going out with 50% open rate, as it should be working. I will tell you that there are now hundreds of different email setups that people go for, depending on how sophisticated they want to approach it and so on. Well, the certain rule of thumb is you don't use your main domain whenever, because you don't want to ruin the reputation for it. And I don't want you to get into all this private infrastructures and infrastructures that are require 10 different tools for them to make sense. So look, 40 domains, 2 inboxes per domain, you got the point. These are some of the examples with which you can start getting to 5 demos a week. If you're still not booking 5 demos a week, despite doing this for a couple months, there are a couple main reasons which might be happening. So not enough inputs and eyeballs on your offer. For example, we sent out 50 cold emails. Well, especially in saturated markets which get heavily bombarded with cold emails, think e-com, agencies, startups, typically they receive hundreds of emails on a regular basis. So for you to stand out, a couple of personalized emails is not going to do the job. Then if you think that your amount of inputs is fine and you are spending hundreds of dollars a day spent for a bunch of weeks, you are doing all this outbound and so on, and you think that the volume is there, the thing which may be then wrong is the wrong value proposition message. You want to double check that the way you are reaching out and positioning the invite to a call, that the problem that you speak about in your copy is a real problem and is proven to work. And then the way you invite people, your product, you communicate it clearly enough. If you are doing these two things, then let's go to the next one, which might be the wrong channel. As I mentioned, if I would be trying to scale this solution by just posting on Twitter or cold dialing every random business there is, 90% of which wouldn't even have the need for hiring developers, my success rate is going to be a lot worse rather than if I just go for those startups that are actively placing developers into their business. Then regardless of the channel, and lastly, like, look, if you're sure about that the channel works, you're sure that yes, this messaging makes total sense, and your past customers said that's exactly why they paid for your solution, then you are doing enough volume. The last thing might be cheap or non-existent problem, but yeah, because again, if you're doing all this at scale, but people are still not coming to calls or buying, then consider the fact that you're just building something totally useless, and people who paid you did so because they knew you from before. Hopefully that's not the case. However, I think I would never meet a founder that checked all these boxes and still, yeah, it's like impossible to check all of this and still not be booking meetings. Then regardless of the channel, LinkedIn content and good website helps, but you can get to 5 calls a week without them. And please don't get lost in this 3, 5, 7 months arc of you trying to make this neat Facebook page or whatever. Look, just start getting your message out there and get it in front of people. Awesome. Now we have gone from discovery stage to the validation stage, and by now, congratulations, you are booking at least like 5-10 meetings every single week for a few weeks in a row. What we want to do to get from 5 to the next 20 meetings a week is the following. We just scale inputs, because if you've followed the frameworks I outlined here, then you have gotten to your 5 meetings a week in a sustainable way, and you can predict how many meetings you're getting based on number of inputs that you are making. This means if you're making 100 dials a day, you place a second person, you start doing 200 dials a day. If you've been doing $200 a day in spend, you go for $400. You get the idea. So more accounts, more ad spend, more domains, and more dials. Then you find ways to get cost per call cheaper through testing. And I understand that it's awesome that finally you are booking some meetings. Now, what may be preventing you from moving from 5 to 20 calls a week? Main reason is volume, and the reason volume is stopping you and you can't scale it is usually because your calls are too expensive. For you to start getting cheaper calls, you need to test more angles and to find one that resonates with the market even better. Sometimes with my clients, we would nail it from the first attempt in the first week and book 23 meetings first week, 14 meetings in the first week, and I got a lot of other examples. And one story is we just made 62K in the first week of someone being inside the program, just because I've done it so many times that we nailed it from the first attempt. Next, you go from low leverage to high leverage acquisition methods. So imagine you got to 5 demos a week by spending 5 hours every day on your own LinkedIn account, and you managed to get there. So what I don't like about LinkedIn Outbound is that the leverage factor is not there. Yes, you can automate it, of course, but your own account is always going to be performing best. And I'm just sure that you have better things to do than sitting and following up on leads all day. And the moment you place someone like I did, an SDR, to do lead gen from your own LinkedIn account, the situation happened with me that they restricted my account because I had Sales Navigator, and they didn't like that I shared with someone else because my SDR who I hired back then confused proxy settings, and that's how I now don't have a LinkedIn account, for instance. So see, done all the mistakes for you. You want to make sure that the process you're following here is scalable and you have leverage in it. For example, ads. You take $30 on 30 minutes, you put something together, then you don't need to sit at the computer for them to be scaling. You just tweak a few buttons and then you get more bookings. So how we transition from discovery to validation. You started booking 5-7 a week, meaning people are interested in the way you invite them to calls. A reason why I love meta case study is, again, because without risking your account, and I have lost mine, you can scale this up. With cold email, you may have huge fluctuations between lead lists, making hiring and growth unsustainable. Unless you are selling to a huge market like e-com, all e-com shops in the world, or any marketing agency in the world, and so on, you may experience that you may go from 5 meetings to 0, to the next lead list was like 15, then another one is 2. I don't like this. And you can't really plan out years in advance with your strategy if it's like up and down all the time. So once you went through a validation stage, the approach that has allowed me to make mid 8 figures for B2B SaaS is seeing which messaging has already worked and scaling this invitations amount using ads. A lot of times that's just what we did. So imagine first hour of me talking to someone, I interview the founder, okay, what has worked for us in the past, why it worked, what hasn't worked. We put together the picture of what type of message we need to get in front of more potential buyers. We launch the campaigns. I have many examples of people filling their calendar the same week as they join. Then iterate to build a scalable business. So this is where you find out if your business model or acquisition method you build out is unscalable, and you often need to go back to the drawing board. I went from averaging 1 to then averaging 25 meetings a week, back to 1, back to 25 a week a few times, to design the customer acquisition that is coherent with my long-term vision. And I spent years and multi 6 figures earning the lessons to find out I should have just improved the basic strategies I used long ago. And as I mentioned here, with this $36,000 lesson, again, I never zoomed out to understand, okay, what I'm doing is, it's sort of working, but I cannot 10x it, and that's why I needed to restructure everything. So the nice part here is that you can start reverse engineering your growth. So once you have a predictable CAC, you know it costs you, say, 1K to get a customer. You can calculate how much it would cost you to hit your next revenue milestone, whatever milestone it is. Imagine you want to get to 5 million ARR, you divide 5 million, or for example, how far away you are from 5 mil, by your CAC, and that's the amount you should spend to get there. And this, just in your own mind and in your brain, allows you to plan out, okay, how you can allocate the budgets accordingly to get to your desirable revenue milestone in the quickest time frame possible. Key mistakes which I want to go through. So one is stopping doing what's already working. And I have put 5 exclamation marks here for a reason. You started booking 5-10 calls a week, and then the interesting lesson I learned is when the human brain doesn't have problems, it tends to create them. Keep it in mind that when things are working, maybe you just need to let them continue to work. This is very important, because sometimes Imagine I would get the founder from like say 0 to 5, 10, 15 demos a week, and they're like, oh, we're getting meetings. And I have done the same mistake, by the way. Let me now test a different headline. Let us go for a more appealing value proposition and change thing here and there, sometimes combined with another channel, and boom, all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, the pipeline becomes empty because the whole equation is now totally upside down. Keep this in mind, you don't want this to happen. Not putting a repeatable sales process in place to systemize the close rate. At this phase, you would want to have a sales process that you follow, because yes, you might go with the flow yourself, but unless you have the best of the best sales talent, usually you can't just tell them go with the flow and they'll consistently close you cold traffic into high ticket upfront payments. So starting experiments with cooler channels. Imagine you've been doing cold emails, you have a process around that, and then what you do, despite getting 10 calls a week, you're like, oh, we're getting 10 calls a week, let us also go start SEO. And at the same time, let's also diversify and do something like Instagram Reels. Because why not? You start looking for agencies to help you there. You start splitting your focus. 2 months go by. Turns out that you've missed and skipped some important things in your cold email infrastructure. It failed. You didn't notice it a month ago. Now your pipeline is empty. People need to have their salary paid. You messed up. Again, to prevent this from happening, stop chasing these shiny objects and avoid this shiny object syndrome, and spend no more than 20% of the budget into experimentation and other things. Not 50, not 70, but you always leave 80% to be doing to continue doing something that has already worked for you. So again, there is no perfect way, because with ads it requires more budget than other channels. However, oftentimes we start at just 50 and $100 a day and get ads profitable in week 2, 3. Sometimes may take 1 or 2 months, but still. Then content, it's inconsistent and can get you more meetings 1 week and no meetings the next month. Cold email, new restrictions making the game harder every week. Results totally vary from one lead list to another. With SEO, you don't control the traffic quality and will be limited by search volume. Also experienced that with many founders joining the program, saying that they named this as reasons. So I spent 20K trying to get low ticket funnel to work for my business, and the lesson that I learned was every new fancier way has its downsides. Keep it in mind. There is like no perfect country in the world. There is no perfect way of getting customers. As long as it's working for you and you see that it's simple to operate, scalable, and consistent, it does check the main boxes. If not, you need to keep testing. And another thing I want to mention lastly for the validation stage is improve, don't reinvent. Making experience which may ruin everything. As I talked about, an example, you are starting a new channel, you make a few tweaks to your site, the skills you're booking you're getting from another channel. As I repeated a couple times already, we'll repeat again, 80% doing what works and 20% you do testing new stuff. And now let us come closer to the scaling stage. So scaling stage is getting from 20 to 100 demos a week. I understand that for enterprise type solutions, if you're selling like 50 to $250,000 a year type subscriptions, or sometimes even higher, your entire TAM may be Fortune 500 companies, so your scaling stage starts sooner. But for majority of mid-market SaaS startups, this is where you'd usually be. So how you get from 20 to 100 demos a week? and I'm going to be sharing that because I have taken one startup myself from 0 meetings a week to 60 meetings a week, and have interviewed a lot of other entrepreneurs who've gotten to this stage. So first of all, you map out your operations. And this is finally the phase where, okay, you want to start looking for different operational bottlenecks that are slowing you down because they may be killing your sales processes. You take sheets of paper, you write down all tasks executed in each department, and then you see what of this can be automated, and if it cannot, you hire for tasks that cannot be automated. Usually it's about placing more SDRs and account executives. As you're doing that, you check in on your core metrics with your team daily, which is super important because imagine I've made this mistake. I found some candidate, they seem to be super smart. I'm like, okay, my pipeline is in the good hands now. I don't double check the metrics for a week. Now everything is effed up. So that's why your, how do I even call this? Imagine that your, it's basically the heart rate of your business. You want to be making sure that you're always in control of the numbers and you know all the metrics for your key channels on top of your head. Otherwise, this may be a signal that you're missing out on a lot of errors that are happening there right now. So, and lastly, the thing you would need to do here is you build a larger talent hiring funnel so you can choose from a vast variety of candidates and hire the best. Because oftentimes, yeah, it's like not one person doesn't have enough time in calendar to handle all this. That's when you hire more and more people, and the principle which is gonna put you in the top 5% of fastest growing startups and keep you there is strong focus on placing and hiring the strongest candidates out there. That's why, similar as with your lead generation pipeline, your hiring principles have the same approach to it, that the larger the funnel you have at the top, the more candidates you can go through, the better selection you'll have once they pass 3-4 rounds of interviews. Cool. And by placing more people and sticking to what's working without trying to reinvent the wheel and not making couple stupid changes which are gonna ruin everything, you should be on a good track to get to 100 meetings a week and beyond that. And by then, I think you'd already be generating above couple million in annual revenue. So key mistake number 1 is shifting focus from sales to all other things and thinking people you just hired will just get you 10x without you ever checking in. I already commented on that. Please don't expect this. Yes, you may be fortunate to find such, but unless you are paying 1.5 to 2x above the market, don't expect it. And even if you are, if something goes wrong, they will find a new job in 2 weeks and you'll be left with the consequence for half a year. I'm not trying to push for micromanagement, but checking on metrics every day and asking what the person has done by the end of the day is not micromanagement. Key mistake number 2, stopping the testing. Even if you're here, that doesn't mean it will work forever. Don't get lazy on new things, even if certain outbound script or ad campaign is working for you. I had these situations in the past when, imagine like someone would get from 2-3 meetings a week to 20-30, they're like, okay, I nailed it, I'm going to be printing forever. Then something goes wrong, campaign stops delivering, and now they need to go through this downfall, which is taking a lot longer than it could be, because if you continue finding new things on the go, you wouldn't be stopping your you would not have delays in your customer acquisition then. So you better find a new scalable acquisition methods before something breaks rather than after it breaks. And then what the back end of 60 to 100 meetings a week business looks like. And as I mentioned, I'm commenting on that from a couple of startups I've taken there. So just for example, it could be 300 domains sending out 5 to 15k emails a day. Many times when I talk about these numbers, some people who are starting out with cold emails, they're like, oh, I can do not 10 but 50 domains. No way. And yes, you can. And oftentimes what makes $1 million a month business, they might be indeed running 10,000 domains, which may seem crazy. Sending out like 50,000 emails daily to huge markets. Then 10 cold callers doing 100 dials. And this one is sort of a crazy example, but it's what I know, one company that have scaled to 8 figures, offering website creation has done. It's basically, that's how, instead of going and charging say like 15-30k for website, they stick to 3 to 5k per website price tag, and then just send out like millions of cold emails, and that's how they got there. It might be 10 cold callers doing 100 dials a day, might be 50 LinkedIn accounts operated by 5 people, might be 3k to 5k daily ad spend, and sometimes it may be a mix of that. Again, if you're doing either of this, I'll be super surprised if you are not booking a hell lot of meetings. And usually by the time you get there, especially bootstrapped, there is no other way for you to do it. So sometimes it can be a mix of like cold callers with domains or ads with LinkedIn accounts. You got me. Usually you're already rapidly scaling beyond 2 to 3 million ARR by then. So I've gotten more B2B SaaS founders through these stages than anyone I've seen on the internet, and have the best client results in the game. So if you'd rather get there fast using proven processes rather than hoping you once get there, you can apply to my coaching at saascamp.com, and I will help you go through these phases as fast as possible, because with few startups it only took us couple months to go from here to here, whereas I know that for a lot of other entrepreneurs it's taking 3, 5, sometimes 8 years or more. Appreciate you watching this video, and talk soon.